You don't need to be like in a leotard covered in blood to be like this cool girl in a rock band. Like there's so many different types of women and so many different ways to feel good and empowered and raw. And I just kind of like remember at that moment just being like, you gotta find a way to contribute somehow, like no matter how that is.
That's Elana Carroll, aka Party Nails, and this is the Powerful Ladies Podcast. Hey guys, I'm your host, Cara Duffy, and this is the Powerful Ladies Podcast, where I invite my favorite humans, the awesome, the up to something, and the extraordinary to come and share their story. I hope that you'll be left entertained, inspired, and moved to take action towards living your most powerful life. Elana Carroll is a musician, artist, music educator, and on stage is known as Party Nails. You can find her indie pop music on Spotify. Her song Solo is a personal favorite of mine. On this episode, we discuss how being a musician means being an entrepreneur, when she realized music was her true calling, and how she got the name Party Nails. All that and so much more coming up, but first. Being an entrepreneur or a small business owner is hard. But the good news is it's much easier when you have a coach and a community. The Powerful Ladies online community gives you both. It's where powerful ladies and powerful entrepreneurs from around the world discover clarity, produce results, and experience success at new levels. Because together we thrive. As a member, you get access to master a new skill for business every month, network, brainstorm, and collaborate with like-minded women, get access to Powerful Ladies events, our library, resources, and more. Participate in group coaching and workshops led by a multipreneur business coach. And you get the accountability and inspiration to stay on track and make it happen. Join today at thepowerfulladies.com. Well, welcome to the Powerful Ladies Podcast.
Thank you, Cara. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. So Jordan was bragging all about you and how awesome you are and how much you're helping her and that she's just so excited to, have found this awesome LA friend. Because my experience is like finding friends when you move to LA is like not the easiest city to find your people.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
She's like, we need to have this woman on the podcast. She's so awesome. She's called Party Nails. And I was like, wait, hold on. Say that again. Like I got so excited because Jordan recommends people all the time, right? Most of whom are totally awesome. And I immediately went onto Spotify, found your stuff. And this was just before I was about to make dinner. And then you have now become my dinner making playlist.
I feel like that's a big life goal of mine is to become the dinner playlist. So thank you.
You're welcome.
That's so sweet and so exciting.
No, you never know. Like your sister gives you some tip or advice and she's like, no, she's great. You're like, okay, I'll see.
Yeah.
And I was like, why didn't you tell me about her sooner? Like that was really how I felt. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Well, I would love to start by introducing yourself to everyone that's with us today and then just tell them who you are and what you're up to.
Sure. My name is Elana Carroll. My artist name is Party Nails, and I live in Los Angeles now, but I'm originally from upstate New York near Albany. And I started as a viola player at 10 or 11, fifth grade, I think. And then maybe 9. Yeah, I think it was fourth grade, actually. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then guitar at 11, and then eventually production when I was in college or the very early years of college. So now I'll be 30 in July. So it's been a minute of all of that. And I started touring 3 years ago. So I'm still kind of at the beginning of my professional career, but I'm past the brutal beginning, which is that was really something for sure. Yeah.
For people who aren't musicians, what's the brutal beginning?
Oh my gosh. There's a lot of challenges with figuring out how to do music, but also survive and pay all of your bills, especially if it's tricky for everybody. But if you're somebody like myself who had to sort of pay a lot of bills from an early age, which is totally cool, no complaints. It's just another thing to worry about and another level of insecurity that you have about yourself. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a really big thing, because not only do you have like imposter syndrome without all of the pressures of like social and financial life, and sort of being like, was it worth it going to college? Like, should I have gone abroad? You know, you're like, what, 21, and you're just like, did I do everything wrong? And like, you're pretty convinced that you have. So like all of that is just very, very challenging in and of itself. But then when you do start actually recording and writing and making things, then all of the challenge in your personal life is sort of exponentially greater, because it's also in your creative life, because there's so many ways you can approach the same problem. I always say, like, to people I collaborate with, when they sort of talk about what inspires them about musicians, if they themselves aren't musicians, I always like and enter into this conversation with them where I say something like, you know, I think a lot of the musicians that we all admire and we all consider to be very prolific and like have found their way of contributing to our pop culture canon, there's probably like 20 other identities that they could have just as easily adopted and done as beautifully as the current one. And if they're smart / lucky, like they can kind of do all of them through the course of their career. But like, I don't know, like Jordan and I have talked about this a little bit. It's like you can actually be a lot of different people in one person. You just don't really know which one's going to resonate at the time, like whether it's Spotify or your show or who's going to take you on tour. And at a certain point, like it is a little out of your hands, because you are talking about a market and you are talking about like putting something in the world that needs to be there. So you kind of have to relinquish control while at the same time figuring out how you get to still be yourself in a way. So that's very brutal, because it's just a lot of rude awakenings and a lot of like conflicting information. You know, it's a weird place to find your balance, I think.
Well, how did you come up with the name Party Nails?
The origins of Party Nails were themselves sort of brutal. So I was in a shitty relationship. I just remembered I'm allowed to swear. And we both were sort of trying to figure out, me especially, because we were trying to figure out how to survive, like how to get into the professional world of musicianship, but having to work full time in order to support ourselves, which is hard. And he had received a small inheritance. So he had a little more free time than me. And that like created some resentment on my part for sure. But I tried to manage that as best as I could. And we together were just really interested in working together. His skill set, he was a few years older than me. And so he was like the first person to record my voice and kind of produce it in a way that it was like very visible, the same way that it would be in a pop recording. And he was the first person to be like, yeah, like you can sing like that if you want to. And I was like, what? That's crazy. Like, why wouldn't I just turn up the distortion on everything and like chain smoke in my rehearsal space? Like that's what music's really about. Like I just was like 21, you know, I was just like so in this other world, and it was very hard for me to commit to whatever this other thing was. So for a long time, it was sort of enveloped in this complicated relationship where I was slowly learning a lot of those other things and slowly taking risks, but also always kind of having my foot in my own world of my artist project that I had at that time, which was called Vernus. And now, years later, it's come full circle. And a lot of those sounds that were there and the songwriting styles that were there are now part of Party Nails. But initially with Party Nails in like 2014, that's what it was like. And we got a few... the one contact that we had in like real music was somebody who had all these briefs, which is like, hey, everybody, this is me typing in email. Hey, everybody, like we need a song that sounds just like Feist 1, 2, 3, 4. Like make that in 2 hours and send it back to us. Like you and 200,000 other people are submitting. And if you win, then you'll like rule the world is basically how it felt. So we would just do tons of those. And eventually we needed a band name and we were out. And I saw these girls that I knew doing their nails together. And I liked that we were like at the house party before we were going out. And I just thought it was so sweet. I loved that like pretty much no one else would notice besides them. But it was like this beautiful, like, we're doing this for ourselves and for each other. Like, we're painting each other's nails so that we can feel a little bit more empowered when we go out. And I just thought there was like some sort of almost like a secret language kind of. And I was like, party nails. And it ended up sticking. And a few years later, I had to like fight a little bit to keep the name once I severed ties with those people. But I was like, no, we're not, there's no compromising. The name is mine. It's a beautiful name. I'm keeping this forever. So that's the long version.
No, I think it's a great name. Like instantly you're like, oh yeah, this is going to be fun. It's party nails. Party nails are fun. Like there's no way around it. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I like will get the, I can't get my nails done permanently because I play the guitar, but there's like press-ons that you can get. Oh my God, that is a gift from God. Just like being able to take them on and off. But when I have them on, I can hardly do anything. I just become this like totally useless person. I'm like on my phone, literally like this. Like I can't.
Yes.
I don't know how women do it. Like I guess just practice.
Yeah, it is.
Like
that's also why
else.
like you see women typing like with their knuckles. I'm always,
That's how I'm going to do it next time. I'm such an idiot for not thinking of that. Just a couple of years ago, I was still hosting at a restaurant down the street and I wore my press-on nails. And I remember like sometimes I would run food to tables. And at one point I ran food to someone's table. It was like a couple on a date, which is always like stressful because like you never know what's going to happen on those dates. And I like put down the plate and I came back up and one of my nails was gone. And I was like, oh my God, if my nail is in their food, I don't know what I'm going to do. And eventually, and I just kind of like casually tried to like be like, yeah, I'm just going to hang out by your table for a second, just like make sure everything's good. And I eventually found the nail on the floor near their table. And I was like, thank God. But wow, how gross and embarrassing.
If you do want some awesome press-on nail kits that are like custom made, there is a woman who's in Thrive Collective and part of Powerful Ladies, and her Instagram is D's Nails.
D's Nails?
Yeah.
Cool.
And she custom paints them and like does all the things to them and then sends you your own kit. And you're like, what?
Wow. I'm into that for sure.
Wow.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Well, I would love to get back to you and your journey. So you're growing up in upstate New York. You're getting into music very early.
Yeah.
Did you always see like LA on the path, or how did you decide to end up in LA and to really be leaning in on being a musician?
That's a good question. I went to college in Massachusetts. And I went to an early college. So I went like halfway through high school, which I would never have researched that like on my own. I just happened to live close enough and actually know people from my community that went there. But the school itself was actually my first foray into meeting anyone outside of my small town upbringing, really. Like that was the first time I met people whose parents had like jobs like professors or actors or writers. Like everybody in where I grew up was working class and like, I don't know, like was the contractor of the town or like owned the bakery or something. And so that was a big step for me, just that tiny thing. And it was literally 30 minutes away from my house. After college, I moved to New York City and lived there for 3.5 years. And it was there that I would actually like pretend I was in LA for some reason. And I don't really know why. Like there was this one bridge between, and now I can't remember the name of it, even though I used to ride my bike over it all the time, but there's a bridge between the top of Greenpoint and the bottom of Queens, the bottom of Long Island City, that when you would go over that bridge, like there was just this moment where it kind of reminded me of downtown LA because I had visited a couple times. And I just kind of started pretending and like was just like, cool, I'm like living in my fantasy, like whatever. And then I had quit. I kept a full-time job for a while, for 2 years and change, doing I was managing a web design studio. which was great. I'm like a control freak person. Like it all happened in college. I was just like, I will get straight A's and I will get scholarships and like just Post-its everywhere. And so I actually, the job was good for a while until it drove me absolutely crazy because I just couldn't stop thinking about music. So I quit and became a nanny. And while I was nannying, I had this one day where I was like, you got to go to LA. You got to go to LA. Like literally like that weird God is talking to you or whatever you want to call it. And, I don't know. I don't know why I think I just went so hard because I really felt like I had nothing to lose. Like it really did feel like my practical approach was very much at odds with how I needed to approach things if I was ever going to see any success. Like I had always had a savings, always been on top of my bills, always taking good care of myself. And then like there was this other, well, that's this hand actually. And then there was this other thing that was like, well, like, you know, you don't know how much it's going to cost to move to Los Angeles. And you don't know what it's going to be like when you take a job as a waitress and work 3 days a week instead of 5 days a week. And you don't know what it's going to be like when you spend your savings on a music video versus waiting for the right time. And so I don't know, it was just kind of like a domino and it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying, but I just kept doing it. And my mom was really supportive over the phone. My college boyfriend, who's now just a good friend of mine, who got me into production, was very supportive over the phone too. They're both on the East Coast. And then I met my current partner who is very supportive as well. Just kind of like these people, whenever I was having my worst days, would be like, you're gonna be okay. Hang in there. The only way anybody's ever been successful as an artist is by getting through this period that you're currently in, and it will end at some point. Yeah.
When you look at the people who you are inspired by within music, or that you really look up to how they've kind of charted their own course, who are those artists, or who are those people in general?
My main, like, I should have a shrine here for her, but instead I have a pug, but that's cool. We like a pug too. Robyn, she's like my absolute number one. And she didn't like start from the bottom necessarily, but I don't know if you know this, but you know, show me love, that song was she was a child star in Sweden. And then she got signed to, Interscope. Why am I blanking? Universal, one of the Universal imprints, and was working with the big guy, Max Martin, for that record and that era of her record. And she so she was like on a major label in the US and was doing tours and was like poised / that was actually their strategy was, we're going to make this person into the next Christina Aguilera because she's got the pipes, blah, blah, blah. And then she actually had a meltdown on stage in the middle of a show. And from there, canceled the rest of her tour, bought herself out of her record contract, took all of her good relationships on the distribution and creative side, started her own record label, and then proceeded to change the face of pop music for everybody. Like, boom. Yeah. And I just, like, when I figured that out, I was like, oh my God, like this woman, like I've watched these interviews with her. There's a short Swedish documentary. It's like deep in YouTube, and I can find it if you guys are ever curious, but it's totally in Swedish. And she cries like through all of the interviews. And she's just like, I wanted to be able to be what they wanted me to be, but like I literally physically broke down and could no longer do it. And I needed to find another way to be. She just couldn't not be herself, you know, and she couldn't stop creating. And I just really, I related to that on like a smaller level, obviously. And I just really loved that blend of like business and creativity and and vulnerability and strength too. Like she wasn't like, yeah, like fuck those people, blah, blah, blah. She like actually picked up the phone and was like, hey, do you want to make another record together? Because like I have ideas that I think are better than what we were doing before. And she lived through a period of making music where she wasn't nearly as successful commercially as she was previously, but now she's widely regarded as like the queen of pop because of what she does. And she's consistently like 5 years ahead of the curve. It's crazy. Like Dancing on My Own is from 2009. Like that's a long time ago. And it's like, I don't know if you've ever been out when it comes on, but like everyone enters this state of like body positivity euphoria, you know, and I'm just like, this is so beautiful. It's just like she invented that. Like I admire that so much, that blend of like happy, sad, and just kind of making it happen.
Yeah. When I heard the first song that shows up for you in Spotify, your
solo,
yes,
yeah.
It made me like in my mind, I got flashbacks to like Dragonette and Elle and some of these like French European like pop
cool
ladies that I'm like obsessed with.
Awesome.
But I felt that in there and I was like, oh, it's like that, but new. And I was like, yes, because you wonder like where that's evolving to. And both of those artists are really just doing like whatever we want. And this is awesome, which I also really appreciate.
Totally.
So I definitely heard I'm doing it my way and we're having fun and I'm going to, plus thinking about what Party Nails means to me, it all came together and I was like, yes.
Oh, that makes me happy. That makes me really happy. That's like, ever since I was little, I remember being like, yeah, I feel like girls and other young people just need to see and hear that sort of excitement about being themselves a little bit more. Because I started getting like Spin magazine when I was maybe 12, and just like everyone besides Karen O from the Yeah Yeah Yeahs and Brody Dale from the Distillers were dudes, like with their guitars, like nah, 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 nah. And I was like, I love Brody Dale and Karen O, they're amazing, but also like you don't need to be like in a leotard covered in blood to be like this cool girl in a rock band. Like there's so many different types of women and so many different ways to feel good and empowered and raw. And I just kind of like remember at that moment just being like, you got to find a way to contribute somehow, like no matter how that is. And I didn't really think that I would manage to do a tiny bit of that musically. I thought it would be more like I love doing that as a caregiver for sure. Being like, you know what, it's okay to cry or whatever, but to do it on stage and to do it kind of together with a group of people in a crowd is really, really special because your fans like give it back to you too. They tell you like, this is what I see. This is what you give to me. Like, thank you so much. And you're like, my experience of that is, holy shit, like, thank you for telling me. And also like, let's go do more. Like, let's go do more of that because like, we need this. We need this like experience together.
You really feel the full cycle of the energy, right? I'm going to give you everything. And then when you get so much more back, you're like, whoa, like I would be happy if I just got like Yahoo in the back. But like, oh, did I freeze? Oh, sorry. So I was saying like when it's full circle, right? You give everything you've got. And when you get more back, you get so excited because you would have been happy if you got like a clap in the back. You would have been like, yes.
Exactly.
And then when it rains down on you, it's like, I didn't know that was possible. Like, what?
Exactly. I didn't know about that until I started touring because my first tour was with audiences that were like maybe 500 people, like give or take. Usually, about 500 people, I think. And the fan base of that headliner, Paris, is just whatever Paris likes, they're going to just be like, we're here for you. We're here for you. So it was such a wonder. Not every fan base is like that. Like some fan bases are like, why are you even here? And you're like, because there needs to be an opening band, dude. They're like mad about it. But this fan base was just like, I could say anything. And it was just all like like 14-year-old queer kids. They were just like, we are here to party. And being able to get that feedback so quickly. Like if I lifted up my hands, like they would do that. If I said like jump, they would jump. And it was a nice experience to get that after, you know, like a decade of like me and 5 other people in a bar being like, hi, I'm singing, hopefully you hear me. And like, that's a good skill set. Like really the experience is both, I think. But kind of getting that gratification after a long time was really helpful. And there's a part in the Robyn documentary when she comes off stage after she describes that cycle of energy, and she comes off stage and you can just see in her eyes, she's like wired. And she says something like, they really gave back to me tonight or something like that. And it's like, I don't know, it's kind of exciting to understand a little bit more of what exactly that means. I obviously haven't really experienced that with a large audience that are all Party Nails fans, which is a goal of mine, mostly because I think it would be really, really, really fun for everybody involved. But I don't know.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's, I feel the same way when I lead a class or a workshop that is awesome, right? Like I did one the other day and people were like laughing and happy. And then like some people were crying, and like my goal is never to make you cry. But like if you're crying, I'm like, we did something important.
Wait, that's amazing. I know a lot of teachers who, like music teachers, who say that people who perform generally make good teachers, like, or at least there's a skill set there that is harder to get without having performance experience. But I am really impressed that you're able to get that sort of connection and vulnerability via Zoom, because I struggle with that for sure. Like during this quarantine time, I'm like a little apprehensive to do a lot online. I know you kind of have to, and workshops are a little different than performances, but in the same way, it's like, do you feel like you have to be a different sort of leader?
I don't. I mean, most of my life is split 50-50 between leading powerful lady stuff and then being a business coach and consultant. And most of my clients in the business coaching and consulting space are over the phone or Zoom once in a while. Like most people are by phone and a handful in person if they're local. So it's crazy to me to like see people's faces now again.
Oh, interesting.
And for a long time, it was really distracting because most of the time, like I can forget I exist, and I'm just like in that headspace of like listening and what do you need? And there are moments when you're leading a group and you're like, I'm not talking. I don't know where this is coming from, but I'll just keep opening my mouth and the words come out and it works. Because you get into like that zone. Like we did the podcast that we released last week. I loved that the guest was like, I think I just blacked out for an hour and a half, but this was fun. And that's what it's like sometimes, right? Like sometimes you go into a different space. And while I don't have a big performance background, I've spoken a lot. I've done I think like 500-ish, 500 people is like the biggest group I've spoken in front of.
Wow.
And when it's that big, like you're not really talking to one person, and half the time they're not even listening because it's a work thing and they're on their phone, and half the group might not even speak English as their mother tongue. So they're like sort of paying attention. Yeah. And it really is different. Like, I know that I have my like presenter voice, and then I have like regular hanging out voice, and I don't even know when they switch sometimes, but,
cause you're that like, you've exercised that muscle that much.
Yes. Yeah. And there are times when I'm a little lazy with it and I'll like catch myself and have to get back to it. Like even, there'll be times I tell Jordan, I'm like, I didn't do great in that podcast because I forgot that I had to be generating. Like, so it's like it's a funny thing, but.
Yeah, I relate to so much of that. And I know a lot of performers and people who are in positions of like just being looked at or being the leader do, you know? And yeah, I always like attribute it to a level of spirituality almost. Like, I don't know if that's just me trying to make sense of it or if my therapist planted that in my head or what, but yeah, I do think of it sort of as like you become a channel kind of, and you just kind of let this other energy happen. And over time you develop a trust with whatever energy or energies, plural, take place with you. And that's pretty, like, reaching that level of trust, I think, is the exciting part. Almost more exciting than what comes through you. You're just like, wow, like, all right, I'm letting go. This shit's happening, at least on a personal level. Obviously, it's you can have a lot of pride about what you're able to do as a result of that trust. But on a personal experience level, just kind of relinquishing control like that because you've practiced it so much is a really wonderful feeling.
Yeah. Because there's, and I don't know if you experience this, but there's so much of the listening to who you're in front of at the same time. Like to me, it's like an L, because I imagine that the source is coming from through the top of my head. I don't know why that's my visual. I think yoga has planted that in my head. But so like if it's coming this way and then out at a 90-degree angle, it has to go both ways, right? So I really believe it's not that. It's just, like you said, knowing what you already have, like what are the skills I can pull from, or the music or the notes that are going to answer what you want or need right now, and like what kind of makes sense, what I'm being directed to do.
Yeah.
And it's like this crazy form of, it's not talking, it's not performing, it ends up becoming just listening in both directions and responding.
I never thought of it like that, but you're right. You are listening in both directions. Like this one, through the head, and then outward to the audience.
Yes, which I love that you like touched your heart and went out, because that's how it occurs for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think too, like it took me a long time to like use my body on stage, which like is really important for any, like, honestly, waitressing helped me with that, because I remember being like, I have to go up to this table, I have crazy anxiety, like, what am I going to do? And then like I read a couple articles and they were like, just act big, like put your shoulders back, stand up straight. So I would be like, and then I'd be like, hi, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. And like, just like the difference between approaching a table one way versus like this smaller way was, I would get different amounts of money as a result. So having that, like, that financial feedback really translated to the stage in a way, because I could notice like there's a big difference between like doing a little bit of eyebrow furrowing and like actually kind of following a melody with your hand or with your body or whatever. And it takes a lot of there's a lot of fear initially for sure. But to me, it's sort of like that all of those become an extension of this thing. And sometimes you're guessing, in a way, but it's better than just never taking the risk at all, I think,
I love knowing when people have gotten to a place where you're like, okay, this is really happening. Like, I'm actually a musician now. I'm actually an artist. Like, people are listening to me. I'm on Spotify. Like, all those things start happening. Like, when you look back, like, what are some of the reasons where you're like, this never should have worked? I never should have been here.
That's a good question. I never really think of, it's taken me so long to step into my big girl panties, and I'm so grateful to be in them that I try not to doubt being here in a way. But for sure, like there's so many places I still want to go. So I don't think of myself as totally like, the goalpost keeps moving. But for sure, like my goal when I moved to LA was to be able to massively subsidize my life by being a musician. So I've like obviously met that goal, which is great. And I've also been able to go on tours, which are expensive, and all of these other things. And I don't know, I think that like for a while I was drinking a lot, especially on tour. And that was something that now that I've done tours as a sober person, I look back and I'm like, how did I get anywhere on time? How did I respond to any email? How did I sing? How did I do anything? And it's kind of amazing in those moments when you're actually in the middle of that, like bad decision / bad mix of things. Like I remember one tour it was the middle of winter, and we were in a what they call a B market, which is like a town that's not your main, like we were in between like Nashville and Atlanta or something in a town. I don't even know where we were, but it was like a smaller show. Like the venue itself was like the only building for miles kind of vibe. And it was winter, so I was sick. I like had the flu, but I also drank the night before. So I was hungover and had the flu. And during sound check, I realized that I physically didn't really have the strength to push out the air like I needed to. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like I can't, but I ended up doing it. And it was just really an informative moment for me, sort of on realizing how physically demanding singing is all by itself, let alone being able to dance and stuff while you are singing. So I think for me, substance has a lot to do with it. And prior to substance, as a professional musician, it was more of a taking the reins issue and very much trying to make everybody happy and like being there for my family and being there for all these things. So like, I don't know, like everybody's parents are like, come home, like we want you to be here, blah, blah, blah. And everybody's got things that somebody's pressuring you to do, but what you do with that, I just reached a point where I was like, Elana, like if you're going to be totally fucking miserable, like in this small town, like you're not going to be useful to anyone, let alone yourself. And yeah, so I don't know if that really answers that question, but.
Well, I'm going to recap because I think here's what I heard. So I heard that like pivoting moments for you were deciding to follow what you wanted versus other people. And then like just choosing to be sober when you're working because you get to be at a whole different level mentally, physically, all the things.
Yeah.
Like I think it's really hard to be hopped up on like sugary, shitty foods, let alone alcohol, and then like be able to have that channeling thing we were talking about earlier. Like there's such a drastic difference, like taking care of yourself and being able to give back the way that you want to.
Yeah, I think that's been a really big thing for me now. And I'm so grateful I'm grateful that the career trajectory that I've had has coincided with my age the way that it has, because I get to feel comfortable taking good care of myself. I get to feel comfortable in my own skin. Like it all is coming at the right times for those sorts of things. Whereas like if I were in my early 20s, there's just no substitute for the experience of having been through a decade of kind of just that chaotic time of being in your 20s. Like there's no substitute for that. So trying to be, 22 and being able to do all the things that a 22-year-old should be doing, but then also running a business and trying to stay on top of the channel, trying to stay on top of the ideas, trying to stay on top of the relationships, like that sounds really hard. Exhausting. That sounds like a recipe for disaster in a way. And I mean, I greatly admire the people that are able to do it. But for me, I think rather than feeling sad that I should be younger or something, like rather than idolizing youth the way that a lot of our culture does, I'm just like, you know what? You are blessed that you didn't have to do that way and that you're able to do it with this perspective now. Because I agree. It like turns down your ability to channel or something, or like throws a bunch of like gunky stuff in it. Yeah, totally.
Well, just you're exactly where you're supposed to be, which when you are able to see it and acknowledge it, you're like, oh, okay, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Let's go.
Yeah. I always wish for my younger self that I could feel that. But now that I'm just kind of noticing that, like, as I just said, like there's no substitute for just kind of living through it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of tragic in a way.
Yeah.
You know,
When you think of powerful ladies, what does that bring up for you as a phrase? And what does powerful and ladies bring up for you separately?
that's a really good question. Powerful ladies, I love the podcast, so it brings up the podcast for
Thank
sure.
you.
It makes me think of my mom and a lot of the ways that she. I'm her only daughter. She has two other boys, and then my dad. My dad has two boys as well. One of them is just on his side, and so she and I. She didn't get to pass down to my brothers a lot of the female empowerment stuff that she picked up on. And so she gave me a lot of information about like matriarchal societies and blood power and all of this stuff that I just didn't even think twice about. You know, I would go to school and be like, "You have your period, like praise me," or whatever. I don't know. Like, I just remember some of my friends being like, "You need to chill, dude. Like it's not that exciting for me, actually." And yeah, like we had a period party a year after my first period, and like all of our friends and their moms came, and we kind of talked about all of those things that had to do with like basically just being a person with a uterus and going through puberty. But there was a little bit of sex in there, and there was a little bit of lot of vulnerability. Like I remember one daughter being like, "Mom, you never told me that you had an abortion." And the mom was like, "Well, it's not really like, hi, my name's Karen. I had an abortion one time." And like for me, like that really helped me understand the complexity of what a powerful woman is. And like the whole event, the whole upbringing, being blessed with friends who were as willing to be open with their family as I was. Or I think we just fed it to each other, you know, like we enabled it in each other. And that we all agree now that like, that was really formative for us to see what was possible. And it's women and everyone are so many things all at once. You know, you can be this like an incredible channel for other people's needs and wants. You can be a channel for your own. You can be small, you can be huge, you can give life, you can take care of life, you can, all of these incredible things. And I can see in women who are sort of coming into their own light, the way that they struggle with that complexity. Because people around them are trying to tell them to simplify because it's too hard for them to understand. And it's no one's fault. Like it's everywhere. That information is everywhere. That sort of like oppressive, like, why are you trying to be so many things at once? But it's like the moon. That's why the moon is our female symbol, because she like has phases and she gets to be the same thing while being all these different things. So to me, powerful women know that and they embrace that and they pass that down, however that is, like through their business, through their children, through their friendships, all of the above. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
beautiful.
And then on their own, I guess similar, powerful and ladies and ladies, they both like on their own, it makes me think of like the opposite thing. Like ladies makes me think of men and powerful makes me think of weak. And it's sort of like, oh, but when they're together, I don't think of the opposite. Yeah.
It's one of my favorite questions to ask because it's been such the topic being the name of the company and the podcast. And I'm fascinated by the answers that people send me voluntarily and then the ones I get when I ask, because words are so powerful and they symbolize and mean so many different things for different people. But I love your perspective of it because it's I partly love it selfishly because it's so close to my personal definition. But it reminds me of this worksheet we did in Thrive Collective, our online community, where it was the unicorn worksheet. And I opened the worksheet up talking about how we're discouraged to lean in on what makes us a unicorn because you can't check unicorn as a box.
Yeah.
By saying it automatically means like, no, I'm all these things. So like, how do I put them all in? It's like, the political conversations we're having about like, what does ethnicity and race mean? Because so many people are like 50 bajillion things today.
Yeah.
So like, can I color in all the boxes? Like, what am I supposed to do? And
Absolutely.
I'm glad that we're at a place where people are able to like mix it all together and just be who they are instead of cutting off an arm or isolating or like only leaning in on the one thing that people will accept from you. And that makes me excited about how things are changing, because I think about how progressive your mother was in your community to like be having period parties, because like to me, like it would be more common to hear about it now, but
totally
back then you'd be like I'm sure there were people in the community like, wait, what are they doing? And how lucky of you to, like you said, have a community that was willing to show up, and even if they didn't realize what type of party they were going to, they're like, we're in.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said. And I think that it is those little things that end up really rippling, and it's like, by being that model to me, I was able to expand on what that would be, because I had a different upbringing and in a different time with a different set of friends. And what my group of friends is able to do, and what we're able to do professionally is different than, and even like what, as a teacher, I was just telling my partner about this last night, like just remembering it again. Like, I remember I did a bunch of teaching for this group called Beats by Girls, and they teach young women and non-binary people how to make beats using this software called Ableton. And one of the first times I was leading and not just assisting, I like started the class and I was like, this is a workshop and a curricula that was created so that women could have space to feel safe in the world of technology. Like, women can be producers too. And all of the girls looked at me like,
duh.
Yeah, I know. And I was like, sorry, like, good problem to have that, like, I'm behind the curve, but also like, it took me a long time to get here or whatever. Like, I was like, you don't understand. And it was just such a wonderful moment, because I was like, damn. And then like the girl that taught me, like, I've noticed differences even between us. And then like, she's only 5 years older than me. And then, my mom is 30 years older than me. And it's just really fascinating. And I think the best shifts happen in caregiving and teaching moments, like through, your older siblings, younger siblings, caregiving children, teaching, all of that stuff. And so, yeah, I'm excited to kind of see how we keep evolving. And I also want to acknowledge how tricky it is, like, on a professional level sometimes when you're a quote unicorn, because it's like, it makes you a great entrepreneur, but it makes it hard for people to hire you, because they're like, I don't know what you are. I don't know what you do. And at any moment you might become something else. Yeah. So that's annoying, but it is what it is, I guess.
I think it speaks to an opportunity for even to evolve how we hire people, right? Because, who do you want, a one-trick pony or do you want a unicorn? Because if you, as a business owner, like, I don't know where the business is going. Like, oh, all you do is Instagram. Well, what if that changes? What if we have to move? Like, how
Really
much can you grow? But like, that's me being an entrepreneur, knowing how much things change versus a very static, maybe more traditional corporation that's like, I just need you to push buttons. And you're like, but
maybe there's some, I am so sad that I lost the title of this, but there's an Audible original audiobook written by a man who's a professor of business, but it's about power and women in business. And it's amazing. Like, the data that he has is crazy amazing. And one of the things that he talks about is like how good women are at multitasking and anticipating change, especially like there's data that supports that they're like better at it than men, which like, I'm not like a we're better person, but like, I know that like we're really smart. So like,
well,
I kind
if
of
we're the moon.
right. But it's really interesting. Just the way that you said that was very much like, yeah, it's not hard for me to think about how vastly things could change and yet remain the same. You know, like it'll still be the same business. We'll still be offering the same services, but the skills that we need in order to do that will evolve. And it's just like so beautiful to see somebody actually doing that and thinking of it as an opportunity rather than as a strange thing. I feel like maybe I drank the like Kool-Aid a little bit.
The like corporate Kool-Aid.
I'm supposed to be one thing.
You, I really hear in your sharing about like how business minded you are and how entrepreneurial you are. Was that always part of your makeup, or is that something that you've added in and like leveled up with as you've leaned more in on being a musician?
The second one for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It took me a long time, I think, but I just saw that was part of me because it is a little bit like tactile. It's a little bit like measurable, quantifiable is the word I'm looking for, versus like you can make a great quality product and know that it's a great quality product, even in a non-objective framework like music. Like, you know, I can listen to one of my demos and one of my mixes and know that one is objectively better, even though I can't say that one is better than something else in the world. So even with a subjective product, there's still that level of like, I know what's good, you know, I know how to do this. But if you don't do anything with it, nothing's going to happen with it, regardless of how good it is. And so I think that kind of just happened naturally because I was like, I think I liked the challenge of noticing what worked and what didn't work and what people responded to. One of my earliest formative memories in this sense is, I think you guys will think this is a little funny. My song Break was my first single ever. And I remember it just took forever for it to come out, like totally out of my hands, political, behind the scenes, stupid things. And like, I sent it around to all these trusted ears for like a year. And it was the same mix, mastered, same file. And then eventually it came out. And I remember my friend emailing me and he was like, whatever you guys did, like, it sounds so much better. And I was like, we didn't do anything. It just has cover art and you think it sounds different. And I just am so fascinated with that, you know, like just the perception of the quality and the experience is so different. And then understanding that I stand outside of that because I made all those things that are going out. So like, I don't experience being immersed in that world the same way. So I always need to kind of be in two worlds at once. And I enjoy that challenge. I enjoy needing to like wear both hats. I will say that I am jaded a lot of the time too, though. You know, it's sort of like, how much must it suck for camera operators to watch movies? You know, like,
yeah,
they don't believe anything. And I've only done like a handful of music videos and I can barely watch it without being like, they're just in a room that they like built.
Yeah.
And they're just like shooting on cameras. This whole thing isn't even real.
It's not like, magical.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I really enjoy talking about business too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's only by like knowing other women, I think, that have managed to do what they wanted to do that I've been like, oh, I guess I could do that. I wanted to. So I'm going to keep going. And yeah.
Well, you're saying all the right things about like the people who succeed and the entrepreneurs that succeed, about like testing it and listening and responding. Like that's really what most of it is. And it's a constant A/B test, like, or ABCD test, right? Of like, okay, same thing. I'm just going to put a different title on this workshop. Which one lands? Or because it's so much playing with what people want versus what they need, even if you know they need it. So you sell what they want, and then you're like, secretly, I'm giving you what you need. It's like putting broccoli in the mac and cheese. Like, you want a mac and cheese, but you got vitamins. Yeah, that's so much of what it is, and no one talks about it in that. It's like most of the business is not, it's not sophisticated. It's just, a lot of people, maybe to keep their jobs, have layered in all these things and make it sound like you could never be a marketeer. Like, you need to know SEO and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, you just need to know it exists and how it impacts the A/B test, and then go hire someone else to do it. Like, it's way more accessible for people to make what they want and then share it with everybody.
That's reassuring to hear. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I have to give some credit to my partner, because he's so wonderful he's really smart about all of that, but together, I think we kind of, in conversation, kind of work out some of those kinks, like kind of present an idea, and then somebody will poke holes in it, and we'll be like, okay, I'll go back and kind of reassess this. But even within that, like that sort of workshopping that we're able to do together, there's definitely blind spots. Like there's points when I'm very much not his target audience, and vice versa. Like there have been points where I'll show him cover art. Now I can never show him cover art, because there was this one point where I was like, you don't like this because you're not a teenage girl, dude. Like, and you can't, there's nothing you can do that's going to make you understand what this means to, like, the 16-year-old that needs this or whatever. And yeah, I think there's actually an amazing article in New York Magazine that I'll have to dig out, but like, a writer writes about how a lot of corporate jargon is actually, she's like a linguistics person. She's like, it's actually a language that corporate America has invented to sell their jobs back to themselves. And it's a really amazing piece about just the social science of corporate jargon. And all of the images are like people being like, yeah, and then we'll round table this and blah, like just stuff I don't even know about now because I don't work in an office anymore. But like, I remember at the time being like, oh my God, the shit that I say sometimes. Like, oh my God. Yeah.
It makes me really excited that we're forced right now into this work from home space, because you're realizing how much of everything people were doing is like stupid. Like, you don't need it. You don't need half of the stuff.
Fluff.
No, it's crazy. We're doing a launch camp right now about how to create businesses selling what you know, right? Which you're in that industry, right? You know how powerful it is. And I started off one of the things like, who here's planned a trip that they enjoyed and were like stayed close to budget on and had a great time? And everyone like raised their hand. And I'm like, great, you can create a business plan. And they're like, you are full of shit. I'm like, it's no different. It's no different.
Wow.
Yeah.
They just didn't want to level up / realize that maybe a lot of these businesses are just run by normal people.
Right.
You know? And I think it's weird. I get it. It's a little tricky. It's like the adult version of when you're a kid and you realize that your parents are just people, and you're like, I've just been like blindly following you around my entire life, and you're just a person.
You know nothing.
Yeah, I get that it's a little disenchanting and that it's sad in a way, but also, yeah. One thing I'm really enjoying about the quarantine situation is how much it's casting light on what we do use and what we do need. And it's so validating to see how much people use the arts and how much it means to them. And also, this is kind of selfish, but I like seeing all the production value of big productions go down, and like all of these celebrities just look like normal people. Like John Oliver and Trevor Noah are like two of my favorite talk hosts. And, they're both they look amazing. They're wonderful, talented, incredible people, but without like crazy cameras and sound and lighting. And they're just people, just really skilled people. They don't, Trevor Noah's face is all covered and burn in 5 o'clock shadow, and I don't know, it's just kind of really humanizing and wonderful to witness in a way.
I think it's shortening that gap, right? I remember being in high school, and I was always a big like magazine ripper outer, and like,
oh yeah,
my collages and my music, and I don't know how my parents weren't nervous, but how much time I spent by myself in my room. Like,
Dude, that's me.
yeah, like I still can be by myself for a very long time and be entertained. And I just remember thinking like, oh, like even then being like, whose life do I want to emulate or what do I want to be chasing? And seeing these people and be like, oh, it'd be so cool if one day I could do that. And then realizing one day that, which I think we see a lot more now because of exactly what you just explained, there's nothing separating us between them. They just took the actions and did it. Like they just decided like, I'm going to be a musician or I'm going to be on TV or I'm going to be a comic or I'm going to start a business. You're like, it's that easy. It's like, yep. Like, sure. There's like a lot of steps after that, but that's the first step.
The first one is really the hardest one for sure. Mm-hmm. I completely agree. And I was actually just listening to Query, and Karen Esposito was talking about what did she say? She said, there's pros and cons, that before that the way that people criticize the way that she does comedy now, she's like, I'd rather be criticized for that than not doing it at all. Like I'm able to be a model for a lot of people that I wouldn't have been able to be were it not for this platform. And sure, there's still a lot of places I can go, but like, there's only so much that one person can do kind of. And I just kind of liked that, like, very, very rigorous honesty. And because, like, of course, there's always further, you can always push yourself further, but you do need to be realistic about what's possible in the moment. And that's hard for a lot of people to manage because we're not really taught that skill right now, because I think we're just kind of a weird, like, addicted society, and everybody's like, make sure you follow your manners. And then like a few years later, they're like, oh, that kid's bad. And then next thing you know, they're a fucking adult. And you're like, there was no process here. Like, how is this person supposed to manage their time or their feelings or like contribute anything? And so it makes sense that it's really challenging for a lot of us, and it was challenging for me in my own ways and everything. For sure. It's bizarre. And I agree that it's like not complicated. It's simple, but it's not easy.
And it's not visible half the time, right?
And it's not visible very much.
Like if you see it, you're like, oh, the door's been here this whole time. Like, damn it. Like that's what most people say when they've like gone through a hurdle or climbed that mountain. They're like, I had no idea. I just had to push the like yes button. Like, that was it the whole time. No, it's we do a horrible job as a society, at least in the US, of preparing people to be adults. Yeah. Like we're just not good at it. Like, and I'd rather we like picked like either let's let everyone keep their childlikeness and like get rid of half the adult things that we don't actually need to do. But we
full communism, full socialism. Just plug into your chair and get fed.
Yes, like Wall-E style.
Yeah.
No, but like there's so much that like we over prepare kids with things they don't need. And then we don't give them the stuff that they do need to actually become people who can provide for themselves. Yeah. And then we make it really hard and we hide all the secrets. And it's like, what?
So weird.
Whose master plan was this?
Yeah. And then it's sort of ironic that in other places where there's less stigma about staying at home, that it more just has to do with being able to have some choices about why you're leaving or being able to support elderly people in your family. Right. I think there's tons of data to support that, like multiple generations in one house, provided there's space and, no drug problems and all of that,
or COVID,
is really beneficial for all of the generations involved. Or COVID, exactly, which is huge, obviously, right now. But no, truly, it's like, it's kind of ironic that we prioritize, that America prioritizes the nuclear family. I mean,
but do they? That's always my argument. Like when people start getting into the political divide, I'm like, they say family values, but I haven't seen a list of anything they're recommending that adds even to the nuclear classic family. Like we don't even need to get crazy. We don't even need to like If we just talk about the traditional in huge quotes, husband,
Mm-hmm.
wife, 2 kids, family, like what are we really providing to make their life better?
Nothing anymore.
Like
I
what?
mean, there's this great political cartoon that I have never stopped thinking about ever since graduating from college, which is a kid outside of the nuclear family home, the suburban house, 2-car garage, mom, dad, and golden retriever, and his parents are like, "What's so hard? Like, we started with nothing. And then he's in the kids in the yard with this giant bag that just says student debt, health care, no job opportunities, and he's like, "I wish I started with nothing,"
Yeah.
because like he's starting with like all of these issues, and like, I don't know why. I think that most people see that. I do. I just think that the powerful voices are continuing. Like it's pure. Yeah. It's like actually propaganda at this point, which is really fucked up. But I think most people understand that, and most people want it to be better. And most people,
I think so too.
And it's. I still watch children, and I worked part-time at a preschool last year, and when they're little, there's a lot of that sort of progressive thought. Like people are really, really committed to really thinking about like what preschool they're going to go to. They spend years thinking about what preschool they're going to go to. They spend the 2 years of preschool planning what kindergarten they're going to go to. And I think some parents do stay that plugged in, but I think a lot of other parents, like, I don't know what happens, but something happens like between 3 and 6 where like there's like this fatigue. Or like they have another kid, or something's going on with their marriage. I don't really know, like, and no judgment, but like we all get excited about the beginning for sure, and then something happens in the middle where like it's not new. There's nothing
normalized.
New or exciting. Yeah, it just becomes like, yeah, you just kind of got to do it, dude. It's like. Like cleaning. It's like, yeah, it's really exciting to clean like your new house when you first move in or whatever. But then eventually it's like, yeah, you gotta keep doing it.
Yeah.
It sucks. But otherwise, like, your house is gonna be dirty, bro. And it's kind of how I feel about like the kid thing and the paying attention to the way that things affect our lives. We just kind of like, one day we're like, oh shit, now we're old and we have all these mental health problems. And it's like, well, we could have done something about that, but
we forget about the why. Why did we do it in the first place?
Yeah.
Well, I would love to know what is next for you and how are you contributing to everyone having a more awesome life with what you're making?
I have a couple music videos that I'm really excited about. The 2 of them have not been shot yet, but they're exciting because they're about one's about blood power, which is really exciting. It's for my song Cut to Bleed, which is also about blood power. And then the other one is for my song Valentine, which is sort of a like, we're going to make a video about like sort of compromise, nostalgia, lost opportunities, vis-a-vis. We're still kind of brainstorming this, but a little bit of a fan fiction version of Twin Peaks, the relationship between Donna and Laura. That my friend came up with this idea. He was like, what if Donna was in love with Laura this whole time and you play Donna? And we get to sort of explore that sadness with your song. And he's a gay guy. So he was like, to me, it reminds me of like how invisible I felt like up until I met my current partner, especially being in the age group of those women. So I'm excited to explore video with people who are capable of that, because I'm not. And to really put myself in there and like really show up for those things, because one requires choreography and the other requires acting, and I'm not like good at those things. I'm gonna show up for sure. And in addition to the videos, I hope to collaborate with some electronic artists this year for like some mixtape dance music kind of stuff, and hopefully be back on the road when it's okay to like hug people. I'd like to really interact with people as soon as possible, but not until it's safe. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
We ask everyone on the podcast where they put themselves in the Powerful Lady scale. 0 being average everyday human, and then 12 being like the most extraordinary powerful lady that you can imagine. Where would you put yourself today? And then where would you put yourself on average?
On average. Okay.
Well, today, because I selfishly think that if you're on this podcast, you're like getting a boost. But that may not be the case for some people. I could be totally projecting.
I like that your scale goes up to 12.
Oh, did I say 12 today?
Yeah.
Shit, it's supposed to be 10.
Okay. On average, I feel like a 6, I think, at all times, including today, maybe.
Perfect.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong answer. Mm-mm.
I appreciate that.
We're going to turn this into some psychology department eventually, probably. How do powerful ladies rate themselves and why?
I mean, you are collecting a lot of data if you put this into spreadsheets.
Yes, which I do love spreadsheets, so it's a total possibility. Though I think I would make a VA do it over myself, but
I'm a spreadsheet lover too, and it worries me sometimes, but I just accept it.
I don't know how life can exist. Like if somebody told me I could never have a spreadsheet again, I would have to draw them out on paper, at a minimum. But half of my life would suddenly get a lot harder, and I would be doing things that are so unnecessary.
Yeah, I agree with that. And there was a time when we did have to do spreadsheets by paper.
I know, like crazy.
Which is so weird to me. Like half of the joy is being able to move your rows and columns.
And color code them and all those things. Yes. Jordan will love spreadsheets one day too.
One day, I refuse.
As we're wrapping up, is there anything else that you would love to share with everyone listening?
Jordan and Kara are awesome. And if you get the opportunity to be on this podcast, you really should take it because it's very rejuvenating and healing and exciting. So thank you for having me and for being so open and cool and funny. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being a yes, and thank you for making great music.
Thank you. You're very welcome.
Party Nails is awesome, and Elana is a gem. I am so glad that Jordan recommended her to be a guest, and that we had the honor to bring her story to all of you. Powerful ladies honor what they know in their heart and chase the path that is made just for them. And Elana is a great example of doing just that. To connect, support, and follow Elana, you can find her on Instagram and Twitter at PartyNails. And her links to her YouTube, Facebook, and her website, partynails.com, are all available on our website, thepowerfulladies.com/podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Powerful Ladies podcast. There are so many ways you can get involved and get supported with fellow powerful ladies. First, subscribe to this podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Powerful Ladies. Join the Powerful Ladies Thrive Collective. This is the place where powerful ladies connect, level up, and learn how to thrive in business and life. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page, and of course, visit our website, thepowerfulladies.com. I'd like to thank our producer, composer, and audio engineer, Jordan Duffy. Without her, this wouldn't be possible. You can follow her on Instagram at Jordan K. Duffy. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. Until then, I hope you're taking on being powerful in your life. Go be awesome and up to something you love.